I'm great, thank you.
Okay, David, without wasting much time, I'd like to take us back to take us deep into the discussion. But first, now I'd like us to begin from way back 1999 when the president first ran for the position of the governor of Lagos State. I mean, the fight between Gani and all of that way back then. And we still had this issue of CSU, Chicago State University, on board as it then.
Right, so the full story, unfortunately, like with so many other things in Nigeria, appears to have been forgotten. But in case people have forgotten, when this character was running for governor in 1999, he initially claimed he filled on his INEC form at the time that he attended the University of Chicago.
Yeah.
And then, when attempts were made to verify this, the University of Chicago immediately distanced themselves from him. They said they have no records for any person called Bola Tinubu.
That's when he said the state.
He then claimed, so subsequently, he then claimed that, oh, it was a mistake. It wasn't actually University of Chicago, it was Chicago State University. And that it was Senator Tokunbo Afikuyomi, who apparently filled in his INEC form, who made the mistake. So obviously, it's never his fault, it's always someone else who's always at fault for this thing. So Gani Fawehinmi actually took this issue up because he was convinced that he was obviously not being truthful, and with good reason. I mean, have you ever heard of somebody who went to LASU, introduced themselves as someone who went to Unilag, and they say, oh, it's okay, it's not University of Lagos, sorry, it's Lagos State University. Who makes that sign? Who makes that sort of mistake? So Gani took the issue up, and Gani actually made some headway, but there were two things working against him. Number one, this was 1999. The access to information that we have now, we didn't have then. Processes were a lot slower then. It was a lot more difficult to make these things happen back then. And then secondly, Tinubu had already become governor by the time this thing became, something that Gani took up. So he was covered by constitutional immunity, which is why he was able to pretty much get away with it, right? He wouldn't have, there is this idea that he has gotten away with it. Got away with it for 8 years, but people have forgotten that between 2007 and 2023, he actually wasn't in any kind of electoral office. So there was no reason to go after him. The 2 times he has run for office in Nigeria under the Fourth Republic, this issue has come up. So when people talk about it, oh, it has come up several times, and you people are flogging a dead horse. They don't know what they're talking about. The one time he came up before this, his constitutional immunity saved him because this wasn't in the context of a post-election petition. This was just Gani pursuing the matter as a private citizen. It was almost impossible because he had immunity. That's not the case now because this is within the context of the post-election petition, which is going to the Supreme Court, which does have the power to fire him, basically. So that's one thing.
Okay.
Sorry, you sounded like wanting to come in.
Oh, okay. If you're not done, I could allow you. But I mean, Yusuf Tugo, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, has said that, now I'm talking in line with what you just said, that nobody would want to waste time about certificate forgery or qualification for someone who has been a 2-term governor. And I mean, he also said that, okay, I think it's not him, but someone else said, a senior advocate of Nigeria, actually, that this is not going to hold water. Let me use that word. It doesn't hold any water at the Supreme Court.
Well, so first of all, what the Minister of Foreign Affairs said can be completely discounted because, first of all, he's speaking from the point of view of someone who is afraid for his job. Because if Tinubu loses his job, so does he. So, of course, obviously, what else is he going to say? Right? So, it's not an argument that, oh, he has held office before. Therefore, that means that he couldn't possibly have any issue, even when you are looking at the evidence in black and white, which I guess we're going to come to later on in this show. This is not an accusation anymore. This is a legally proven fact now that Bola Tinubu submitted a forged certificate to INEC. That's a fact, right? That has been proven in court in the US now. There's no more definitive way
Okay,
to
it
prove
has
it.
been proven,
So
but don't also forget Westberg's affidavit, which he has sworn, and he has also tried to prove that the president actually attended that university, and the same name of that person is the current president of Nigeria.
again, so I would recommend that people should read the legal deposition when it becomes publicly available, and stop following what some people with vested interest are reporting about what Westberg supposedly said. Yes, he made certain statements on his quote unquote sworn affidavit. But first of all, which has more probate value? A sworn affidavit or a statement made in the context of a deposition? It's the deposition, right? The statements made, he was asked under oath, can you authenticate this certificate submitted to INEC? Does this certificate originate from Chicago State University? Did you issue it? He said, no, that is fact. So that if that certificate did not originate from Chicago State University, that can only mean one thing, that it's a forgery. So let's not get bogged down into and be sort of too smart for our own good here. 2 plus 2 is 4. It's really just that simple. Now, the other person who said something about this isn't going to hold water in the Supreme Court. Well, again, whether that person is an SAN or not, I'm going to have to respectfully say that he also has no idea what he's talking about. Because first of all, in the context of the presidential petition, which is now going to the Supreme Court is in fact allowed to, the Supreme Court does in fact allow for new evidence to be introduced to a case when something that is classified as extraordinary evidence or extraordinary circumstances. I cannot think of anything that is more extraordinary than this. And if the SAN can think of any context in which this is not extraordinary, maybe he wants to educate me, because I feel like a lot of people just come out into the public space in Nigeria and just make bombastic comments because nobody will ever push back on them. So the fact that I'm an SAN doesn't mean that I'm going to come out and say something extremely foolish and I won't get any pushback, right? You don't just come out and say things that aren't true and hope that the weight of your personality is going to push it through, right? He made a statement that is completely false. It does hold weight in court, and it will be considered in the Supreme Court. It has to.
Okay, David, what is the implication of this release record right now?
Well, so there are several implications. I'll start from the most immediate one, which is the fact that the person who is apparently Nigeria's sitting president now has been, I don't know what you want to use, indicted, whatever it is you want to use, but he has been identified now as someone who definitely submitted a forged certificate to INEC. This is one of those rare instances where Nigerian law could not be clearer, right? Bear in mind, the issue is not, did he attend Chicago State University? Was he a woman that attended or a man that attended? That's not the issue. The issue is he submitted a forged certificate to INEC, right? The electoral law is very clear that anyone who submits a forged certificate to INEC is not qualified for the office. It's very clear, right? That is one of the most, that is one of those rare Nigerian laws which is very clear cut and which is communicated and written very in plain English. There is no way to argue around it. There's no technicality. There's no argument, basically. And this is why he fought so hard to prevent these records from being released, because he himself knows that there is no way to fight around this, right? It's very clear cut. It's either the certificate is a forgery or it's not. It has been proven in court in Chicago that it is in fact a forgery. That has been conclusively, definitively proven now. So then the Supreme Court then has to make a ruling based on the wording of the law that has someone who submitted a forged certificate to INEC. Is that person qualified to continue as president, or was that person even supposed to be allowed to run for office in the first place? The answer on both counts is no. So that's the most immediate implication, that we may effectively have witnessed the beginning of the end of the Tinubu presidency. The second implication, which is a bit more distant, is that Chicago State University itself now is going to start having a number of questions to answer. In fact, I'm reliably informed from a contact of mine who's on the ground there that there is actually a criminal investigation which is about to kick off involving Chicago State University, because there's now, if you read through the deposition, it becomes very clear that at the very best, if I'm being charitable, the school at the very best is criminally incompetent at handling records and student data at best, right? I'm stopping short of making a more serious allegation, but let's just say at best they are criminally negligent in terms of information storage and handling. And I'm reliably informed that there's a criminal investigation which is either about to kick off or has just kicked off.
Okay.
So you should keep your eyes on that as well. I'm also informed the fact that there are other people who aren't even directly involved in the issue, who are going to get dragged in, because on the forged certificates there are signatures of people who did not in fact sign on any such certificate, and those people feel that their reputations are being tarnished by being associated with a certificate forger. There's potential legal action also in brewing there, so keep your eyes out for that.
Okay. Okay, yeah, David, let's get to the position. You actually, you tweeted some things. You made a statement. You said the deposition that would actually end, if I'm right, President Bola Tinubu. So let's just get to those depositions right now. I think I have some of them on my screen right now. Some of those tweets you made earlier today. They said the deposition that ended Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Right. Okay, you want like a play-by-play of that?
Yeah, of course. You also said, how many different ways can you say that certificate is a forgery? I can't wait till I get the certified copy and I can upload it in full. This document is delicious. That's what you said. So just go ahead and make it clear to us.
Right. So, yeah, first of all, the copy of the deposition that I have in my possession is what is called an uncertified copy. What that means is that it's the rough copy which becomes available immediately the session is over.
Okay.
So how a deposition works is that it's basically an interview under oath, where a lawyer is interviewing a witness. That's what a deposition is. Now, the person who is taking notes, the stenographer, sometimes they make spelling errors, sometimes minor typographical errors, that sort of thing. So the first rough copy that comes out is called the uncertified copy, right? That it's written on the front page of that copy that this copy is not to be used for the purpose of being cited in other legal cases and whatnot. So I'm actually waiting till I get the certified copy, which is the copy that has been cleaned up, that doesn't have all those grammatical errors and spelling errors and typos.
Right? Okay, but we can go into explaining them. We could just look at them.
Immediately I get that. Oh, yeah, no. So once I get that, I'm going to upload it. Now, this uncertified copy that I have has pretty much all the information that we need anyway. It's just that I'm not allowed to put it out in public like that. So I only put it out in snippets. Now, the tweet that you referenced, where I said the deposition that ended Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that's I think there were 6 or 7 pages of the deposition that I took screenshots of and I put in that thread. And what those pages summarized was the interaction between Atiku Abubakar's lawyer and Caleb Westberg of Chicago State University, where he was interviewed. He was asked multiple times under oath, where did this certificate submitted to INEC, do you recognize it? He says no. The people the so-and-so person who signed on the certificate, were they around in 1979 when the certificate was supposedly issued? Were they employed by Chicago State University? He said no. The logo of the university that was used at the time, the logo of the university that was used on the certificate, is it consistent with the logo of the university at the time? He said no. This certificate, did it emanate from Chicago State University? Did you issue this certificate? And he goes, no. Right, so that's like as close as you are going to get to a conclusive statement from Chicago State University that this certificate is forged. Bear in mind that to try and salvage their own destroyed reputation, they have tried their hardest to avoid coming out to say the certificate is forged, and that this supposed famous alumni of ours, the fraudster, they've avoided doing that. Instead, they will make statements like, Bola Ahmed Tinubu attended Chicago State University. We can confirm that he attended Chicago State University. but we can't confirm that this certificate
Belongs to
is
him.
original. Now, if you read through the rest of the deposition, when they are interviewed in depth, what do you mean when you say you can confirm that this person attended the school? Then it basically boils down to the fact that apparently there's a transcript on file for somebody called Bola A. Tinubu. And that based on that transcript, they are assuming, the word assume literally appears because the lawyer specifically asked him that. So you are saying that you are just assuming that this person whose name is on the transcript is the same person as the president of Nigeria. And he said, yes, it's an assumption. So essentially all those statements that they have made, including statements they previously made on that oath, on the sworn affidavits, which seemed to be, statements of fact, where they said Bola Ahmed Tinubu definitely attended Chicago State University, definitely graduated from here. Those statements, in fact, were made based on the assumption that the person who is on file in the transcript is the same person as the person with Nigerian president. He was asked point blank, have you ever met Bola Tinubu? He says no. Do you know anything about him? No. The only thing I know about him is what's in the transcript. So again, once the certified copy of this deposition becomes available, I'm going to upload it, like I always do, my Scribe account, make it publicly available. Everyone should read through it so that it's not a case of what one newspaper reported, what David Hundeyin said on Spectrum TV. No, let everybody read it for themselves because it's very clear.
Okay, David, this question, I know you've tried to answer it in some other way, but I'm still going to ask again. How will the CSU certificate, how will it help or how will it make the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, do you think he stands any chance or to maybe reclaim his mandate, or do you think it is dead on arrival? I mean, talking about the judicial system that we have in our country currently, I mean, in one of your tweets, you had described them as blockhead. I don't know why you said so.
Yep. Oh, I know exactly why I said so, and I completely stand by it. However, as I said earlier, this is one of those rare instances where the law isn't really up for interpretation. It's a simple 2 + 2 = 4 kind of scenario. So unlike with the appeal court, where even though certain things appear to be very clear-cut, and then there were technicalities that were used here and there, this particular thing wasn't submitted this way, so we're not going to consider it as part of the evidence, or we're going to interpret the law in a way that has never been interpreted before. In this particular case, it's a very short and very direct clause in the electoral law, which simply states, anyone who presents a forged certificate to INEC shall not be qualified to occupy office. Full stop. So the Supreme Court, or if the people on the Supreme Court panel, for whatever reason, decide that their desire to keep Bola Tinubu in office is more important than the most basic wording of the Nigerian Constitution, of Nigerian law, then we're going to be having a whole different other conversation, because that's not going to be a matter of technicality anymore. That's going to be a matter of the judges of the Supreme Court openly breaking the law and flouting the Constitution. We'll be having a completely different conversation in that case. But as long as they decide to maintain what I think is a base level of sensibleness, as long as they decide to prove me wrong about them being blockheads, then there is no way actually for this case to end up in a victory for Bola Tinubu. As far as I'm concerned, the most significant victory has actually been won. It was won yesterday when that deposition was taken. And anyone who reads the deposition will understand why I'm being so categorical about this.
Okay, just a moment. Thank you so much, David Hundeyin. Well, I want to remind the people that this is a program for love of people and governance here on Spectrum Television, and you can be a part of the show by calling the phone number displayed on your TV screen. Feel free to send us a WhatsApp message or a text message or give us a call. We've been talking to an investigative journalist in the person of David Hundeyin, and he's been x-raying the concerns, major concerns, and alleged certificate forgery concerning the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and Chicago State University. So, David, once more, I want to thank you for the good job you're doing. I mean, in journalism, we are also a great beneficiary of your great job. I mean, let me drag you a little bit out of that, but it's still in line with this. You made a tweet an hour ago, and in that tweet you said, my worst genre of Nigerian is the one who speaks and acts like a sensible, rational human being in private, then goes in public to dance naked because they are looking for something from someone. And you said, I'm getting tired of hearing that's not really who he is. It's who he is. And then I want to ask, do you suspect, according to some of your tweets, that the person in question talking about President Bola Ahmed Tinubu may be the one trying to ask the Ghanaian to revoke your asylum?
Well, it's not as if I'm suspecting that that's the case. That's a statement of fact. He absolutely is the one, or at the very least, his administration has actively tried to. They haven't been successful, I should add, but they have made the attempt to lean on the Ghanaian government to give me up, basically, to cancel my asylum, to revoke my Ghanaian passport, to hand me over. They tried for lack of a better term, a kidnapping attempt by themselves. So that's not something that happens without being sanctioned at the highest level. That's not, you don't go carry out international communication, sovereign communication with another country without the head of state of the home country being aware. You don't have that authority. It's only the president who can authorize that. So yes, absolutely, that is the case. However, it's also the case that I myself, I happen to also know how to fight my own battles. I also have a large platform of my own. I also have powerful friends of my own. I was able to get an audience with the UN Human Rights Council. So
Yeah,
it's not as if
we're getting to that.
it's not as if it's not as if anyone who is coming to get me is gonna have it so easy. Like I'm just there for the taking. No, because I also understand the danger of what I do, and I've also taken a lot of precautions as well. I think, which is what a sensible person is supposed to do.
Okay, yeah, concerning the UN human rights interview you had the other time, I should have that on my screen too. I mean, you had a listening ear. How did it feel like, airing your own issues to them? And I asked, away from here, do you think that you're going to get the right responses that you need to get from there?
So first of all, it's not really a case of looking for a specific response. When you put out messaging like that, the purpose of the messaging is optics, it's visibility. It's to put people on notice that if you think that this is just something which is restricted to Africa or Nigeria, and it's a local issue that the world isn't going to care about, well, guess what? The world does care about it, and the eyes of the world are on it, right? Because that in itself is a very powerful deterrent to African dictators who want to misbehave. When they feel like the eyes of the world are on them, it forces them to at least temporarily course correct. Now, you asked how did it feel? Well, I mean, it didn't feel any different to how it has felt every single time when I've spoken on a large platform. It's not my first time I've spoken on a global platform. If anything, I felt a bit sad, I guess, that the first time I got to address a UN panel, it wasn't for something big, something profound, something that potentially could be of benefit to Africa or the world. It was me talking about a personal issue because of someone in power who has a personal vendetta against me. I felt like, when you have a platform like that, I would love to be able to use my platform to impact the world, not merely to talk about my personal issues. So, but unfortunately, that's a situation that I've been placed into no fault of my own. So, it is what it is.
Okay, another thing I want to ask, don't you think that to some extent there may be, the normal politics we see when it comes to human rights, we may see it at the UN level as well?
Well, so again, as I said, the major purpose of engaging with platforms like the UN, whether it's UN General Assembly or Human Rights Council, whatever UN platform it is the major value that these platforms have is visibility and optics. There's actually very little that is decided at that level. Unfortunately, that's just how the world works. There is a very large bureaucracy, and before a decision can be made to pick up a pen from the floor, it can take years, right? Because this person has this interest, that person has that interest, there's this veto, there's that veto. Things move at snail pace. So it's unlikely that UN action is specifically will have some sort of positive effect on human rights. The major value that these platforms have is their visibility, right? It's the fact that there is no higher authority as far as human society goes than the United Nations. So if something is being discussed at UN level, then what that means is that it's something which is of importance to all 8 billion humans in existence, which makes it something that has to be treated with a certain amount of care. So for those who are human rights violators, when their misbehavior is taken to the UN, the major deterrent that is created is the visibility there, that the whole world can see what I'm doing, right? And there are consequences for the whole world seeing what you're doing. But again, those are not direct consequences. It's not the UN specifically on its own that imposes sanctions or does things like that. It's more of an indirect thing. And when everybody sees that based on what has been featured on the UN platform, this is what is going on in so-and-so territory and so-and-so country, people, organizations, institutions, and governments can then take decisions based on that to then say, okay, based on this information, based on what we have seen from the UN, we are going to take so-and-so punitive or remedial action to counteract so and so. That's where the value in these things lie.
Now, back to the Chicago State University saga between the president and, of course, Chicago State University and, I would say, Nigerians, because Nigerians are so much interested in what is going on right now. I mean, what do you think is going to be the outcome at the end? That's a last question.
Let me start with what I hope the outcome will be. I hope the outcome is that the Supreme Court does what it's supposed to do. Not what I hope it does, but what it's supposed to do, right? Because I'm sure there's not a single person who is a qualified judge in Nigeria right now who is reading that position who doesn't know what needs to be done. It's very clear-cut. And by the way, things like this have happened before in Nigerian history. In 1999, the then Speaker of the House of Representatives, a guy called Salisu Buhari, he was impeached and removed from office for this exact issue. He claimed to have attended the University of Toronto. He forged a certificate, and it was determined that the certificate he submitted was forged, and he was booted out of office, right? In 2018, I believe it was, the former Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, was discovered to have submitted a forged NYSC certificate. This is not even a degree certificate, an NYSC certificate, right? A forged NYSC certificate, and she was booted out of office in disgrace, right? So there is precedent for this. So I don't want to hear any of those fatuous arguments that were being made at the appeal court that there's no precedent for this. The sitting president has never been kicked out before, blah blah blah. There's precedent for this.
Now that takes us back to when you talked about immunity. Remember, so don't you think this time the immunity can actually cover him as well?
Well, no, because again, this is in the context of a presidential petition, a post-election petition specifically. So if this was a case that was brought by private citizen David Hundeyin against the president, it would have no effect because he would have presidential immunity. The president cannot be charged criminally. However, this is in the context of a presidential petition. So until the Supreme Court closes the presidential petition, the president is not fully the president yet. Let me just put it that way. The president still has, is still open to criminal liability. So yeah.
Okay, back to your hope. You were still hoping, and then you were still. What do you think? I asked.
Yeah,
what
so
do you
I was
think
saying, I hope that the Supreme Court does what it's supposed to do. Now, what I think will happen is that in the typical Nigerian way of doing things, the people in power will decide that they would rather die than let Nigeria grow, right? Because the whole world is looking at us right now. The whole world can see very clearly. This man, he didn't forge a certificate in Ibadan, in Osun, or in Anambra. He forged it in Chicago, of all places, right? One of the most visible places in the world for this kind of thing. And a federal U.S. judge has, opened him up in a way he has never been opened up in his life before. So the whole world can see this now. What I suspect Nigerian people in power in Nigeria would do is that they will say, well, it doesn't matter. Nigeria is a sovereign country. Nigeria is not subject to American law. So even he submitted a forged certificate, what are you going to do about it? I suspect they're going to do that. And if they do that, as I said earlier, the conversation we're going to be having will be a very different conversation afterwards. I'm not going to open you up to potential NBC liability by saying what I have in mind,
Please
but let's just
don't.
say it will be a very different conversation that we'll be having. Yeah.
Okay, now, when you talked about that, it reminds me of when we had an alleged certificate forgery issue between Mesoma and, of course, Wayek. Was it? I think it was Jam, rather, where she inflated her scores, and we all saw what happened at the end of that issue. Well, we hope that if this is actually the issue, also should get to the right path, just like we saw during Mesoma's case as well.
We hope so.
Thank you so much.
So that.
Go ahead.
Okay.
You wanted to say
I
something.
thought you were invited. Right. I was just going to say, it's kind of like poetic justice that in the same year that issue happened, we're going to deal with the same thing, but on an infinitely bigger scale. And I think this is like a litmus test for knowing which Nigerians are actually ready for Nigeria to grow, which Nigerians actually wish Nigeria well, and which Nigerians basically want Nigeria to remain exactly the way it is today and perhaps a little bit more like yesterday. This is going to be the litmus test. So we wait and see.
Thank you so much, David Hundeyin. Thank you. I must say, you're doing great on your big revelation, I would say. I love to call it big revelation.
Thank you for having me.